Oh, hello there, Shrek here, and I'm ticked off.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Huh? What are you doing in my swamp?
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite copycat, the Infuso, here with another brand new original video with a very, very unoriginal name. As you could have guessed from the title, today we're going to be talking about Shrek.
Somebody once told me hands off my macaroni.
What's a Shrek?
And when it comes to the big green guy, what can you say about him that hasn't already been fetishized? Shrek was a surprising smash hit both commercially and critically. And after that first movie, suddenly, this dude was everywhere. The characters of Shrek started popping up in pop culture. You had Donkey make a cameo on the show King of the Jungle, which was the one episode of that show that everybody watched. You had Shrek doing mean kickflips with Tony Hawk. Puss in Boots got his own movie and series. These characters were everywhere. These movies were so successful that they spawned a couple of ripoffs over the years. More than a couple ripoffs, actually. Not to mention you had Shrek commercials, Shrek video games, you name it, he had it.
What is at the bottom is the Stump Shrek Trivia Quiz, which, if answered correctly, entitles you to 10% off any Shrek DVD.
There were especially a lot of food tie-ins, which is kind of weird because Shrek isn't necessarily something I associate with food, nor would I want to. You could get your own Shrek cereal, Shrek fruit snacks, Shrek cereal bars, Shrek mac and cheese. Oh god, I'm gonna be sick. Shrek-filled Twinkies. Ugh! That green goop, what did Shrek do to these Twinkies to make them look like that? You know what? Actually, on second thought, I don't want to know. He's looking a little bit too adventurous here, and I'm just very uncomfortable. Shrek Swamp Pops? Look at him. Look at that guy. He knows. He's got to know. There's no way he doesn't know. There was even a Shrek McFlurry. Mint Ogre Load. Ogre Load? Ogre Load. Really? That's what you decided on. That was the finalized decision that you came to. For some reason, everybody wanted to get their hands on Shrek's slimy strudel.
I want a Shrek Slurpee banana and some Krispy Kreme.
Simply put, Shrek is love, Shrek is life. The movie was actually based on a fairy tale made in the 1990s. But talking about its source material in this video is really just completely unnecessary. Because let's just say, it takes about as many liberties as Disney does with their classics. Oh yeah, that's right. You try to read The Little Mermaid, it is a significantly different story. I don't think you're ready for it. You don't want to open that book, you don't want to have that conversation. The first Shrek movie was pretty simple. Fairy tale creatures and characters are banished by Lord Farquaad and are forced to live with Shrek in his swamp. Shrek, of course, wants them out so he can continue his miserable life in isolation. I can relate. So he confronts the metaphoric big man and literal smaller man, who replies by sending him on a quest.
What kind of quest?
Lord Farquaad, who, that name is amazing. Lord Farquaad, who is looking to become king, needs a princess to marry. So he sends the ogre out to rescue her with the promise that if he does, then his swamp will be returned to him. The premise for the most part isn't anything new. But what makes this movie so special is everything else. Lovable characters played by accomplished actors, jokes for people of all ages, constant cheap shots at well-known fairy tales. The movie had its own unique identity that made it distinct from movies in its genre. Distinct from movies in that genre that came out before, during, and after it. Shrek is one of a kind. Well, I guess until the end of the movie. Shrek, while being presented as a grotesque, gross-in-nature, earwax candle-making, eyeball soup-eating freak, is still somehow a strangely likable character. Despite being an ogre, we see the character is very much human. And I'm not talking about Shrek 2's Handsome Shrek. Although I should, because he was quite handsome. Shrek had feelings, insecurities, vulnerabilities. Despite being animated, Shrek still managed to feel like a real person. The movie is an exercise in not judging a book by its cover, not judging people, or characters in this sense, by their appearances.
You thought wrong!
Shrek isn't the monster that he's thought to be. Donkey isn't just an ordinary donkey. He's definitely a jackass, but he has a personality.
Shrek, I'm a donkey! I'm a donkey, Shrek!
Princess Fiona isn't your typical damsel in distress. She's actually a badass who knows how to defend herself. And the dragon isn't a hungry man-eater. She's just a lovesick loner. Things aren't always what they seem. The first Shrek had morals it was trying to instill. There were lessons to be learned. And the second one followed suit. After having won the heart of Princess Fiona, it's now time for Shrek to meet his brand new in-laws, who are a little bit less than pleased with having an ogre in their family. I'm sorry, another ogre in their family. Shrek desperately tries to win their approval, not for himself, but to please Fiona. But he finds it next to impossible considering they're legitimately looking to take him out of the equation, by any means necessary. This is mainly because Princess Fiona's father, the king, was once a frog, who made a deal with the surprisingly evil fairy godmother, and in exchange for his own happily ever after, he'd give his first daughter to her son, Prince Charming. Giving your firstborn? This is the fairy godmother, not Rumpelstiltskin.
That comes later.
The second movie is about acceptance. Fiona accepts that her Prince Charming isn't exactly Prince Charming, and also literally is not Prince Charming. Her parents manage to accept an ogre for a son-in-law, the queen accepts her husband for the frog that he is, and the fans accept that they have a sequel that is somehow better than the original.
There was a hilarious ogre named Shrek 3.
The third movie also has a message. It's about taking responsibility. By the end of the movie, Shrek is ready to take on the responsibility of being a father. Artie takes on the responsibility of being a king. Responsibility. And in keeping with that theme, I want to know who is responsible for making this movie the piece of shit that it is.
Look how they massacred my boy.
This movie is quite frankly one of the biggest travesties in all of animated cinematic history. It is by far the worst sequel to an absolute classic. This is the Godfather 3 of this franchise. What's even worse is that this movie isn't even laughably bad. Everyone knows the Bat Bomb known as Batman and Robin, but it's still in a weird way looked back on with some fondness. Because it's so bad that it's kind of hilarious. Shrek the Third doesn't even do that right. It doesn't even do its audience the favor of making a movie so bad it's ironically good. They just made a bad movie that's so bad, it is still bad. Shrek the Third isn't hysterically awful, it's irredeemably forgettable. And that is so much worse. The movie's narrative and lesson it's trying to bestow upon its audience is null and void, considering that it was in fact Shrek's responsibility to take over the kingdom, but he instead passed the buck and now it's Artie's burden. I mean, yeah, he did finally give the kid an option at the ass end of the movie, while the rest of the movie is him saying, you have to do this, you have to do this. At the very end, he finally goes, do you want to? It doesn't really change things too much. He's already put it in his head that he needs to do this, that he is the one person who can rule over the kingdom. Shrek's already built him up and gaslit him throughout most of the movie. Also, he didn't have to rule a kingdom himself. On top of that, how old is Artie supposed to be here? 16? 17? This kid doesn't know what he's getting into. And by the way, I ask his age because I genuinely don't know. I'm only saying this because the dialogue tells me he's supposed to be young, but they didn't really animate him to look all that young. Also, strange choice to make him Fiona's cousin, but also make him look like Prince Charming's illegitimate son. Another strange choice is to have him being played by Justin Timberlake, who used to date Fiona's actress Cameron Diaz. And another strange choice is to have him be played by Justin Timberlake after the last movie referenced J. Timms directly. J. Timms isn't an actual nickname, that's just what I call him from time to time. I like to think that we're friends. He doesn't, and that's fine. In all seriousness, I hope nobody on planet Earth or any other planet we discover in the near future calls this man J. Timms, because that's not good for anybody. That's the worst nickname I ever heard. I mean, that's right up there with V-Dog. And if you're hearing this, guys, please stop calling me that. I don't like it. This movie really doesn't pace itself. It never really stops to smell the onions. It's too busy rushing to get to the end credits. The movie doesn't have the heart that the last two Shrek movies that came before it had. It's not really a natural story. It's very synthetic. Shrek the Third is Shrek by the numbers. It's like a movie that would be made if you played the first two Shrek movies for an AI program, and then you had that AI program make a Shrek movie. That is Shrek the Third. There is zero humanity in this. It's the most basic understanding of the character, and that's why it really didn't work. The characters here become caricatures.
It's not Shrek.
They're dulled down to one-note jokes, some of which don't even have punchlines. The idea of Prince Charming taking his revenge on Shrek and Fiona is such an ineffective idea that I can't for the life of me believe that it didn't get turned down. Watching this movie reminded me a lot of the Shrek ride at Universal, where you're wearing your 3D glasses and watching the ghost of Lord Farquaad try to get back at Shrek. It has the same exact energy, which is fine for a side short, or maybe even one of those swamp stories, but for a feature-length movie? Why? The character wasn't even the main villain of the last movie. I don't understand the need to bring this character back, as he was always underwritten, poorly developed, and without his mother's backing, kind of boring, quite frankly. And if I'm being honest, the Lord Farquaad ghost story has so much more heart and is so much closer to the tone and the spirit, ironically, of Shrek that it's much better than this movie. And once again, that was a ride at Universal, and this is a feature-length film. Why is that? The weird way that Charming, whose name is not an indication of his character, I assure you, manages to talk all the reformed background villains of the franchise into joining his side, is out of character for everyone. Out of character for Charming to be able to charm people, out of character for Charming to be able to form as many sentences as he had, out of character for all of these characters who mostly had pleasant minor interactions with the lead characters, and out of the character for the franchise to have such incompetence front and center. The movie honestly isn't even worth the watch, because ultimately it doesn't really do a whole lot. You can jump from the first two movies and straight into the fourth, and the only thing that's changed is now Shrek and Fiona have kids. That's literally it.
No, that's just about enough, Shrek.
Although they never really get established either, because off the top of my head I couldn't tell you one of their names, and I honestly can't even tell you how many kids they have. There's some. Shrek the Third was allegedly supposed to be the finale of the franchise, but I really can't blame them for coming back after that one. Who wants that to be the final impression and send-off of Smash Mouth's favorite DreamWorks movie? Not me. Not me, that's for sure. Shrek 4 gets a lot of swamp shit. A lot of the time people tend to lump this one in with the last one and say that these are the two worst Shrek movies, and sure, I guess technically that's right. Because, you know, you're never going to top the first two. Shrek 4 certainly isn't Shrek 1 or 2, but it is still leagues ahead of Shrek the Third. Shrek 4 to me is the most underappreciated and overlooked movie in the lineup. There's so much I enjoy and even love about this movie. Not everything, mind you, but there are things. Let me be real with you. Let me give you a spoiler alert now here. This is a little bit premature, but I'll go ahead and say it. I believe the Shrek franchise died after the second movie. Because to me, anything in the Shrek brand after that is completely unnecessary. I think the foundation of the first two films, the natural narrative ends at the credits of 2. Shrek 4, like everything else that came after, like Shrek the Musical, like the Puss in Boots movie, like the Puss in Boots series, like a bunch of other things I'm going to end up talking about on this channel, are all unnecessary.
Hey, irrelevant.
But just because something is unnecessary doesn't mean that it's bad. Shrek 4, completely unnecessary. But it's still really, really good. To me, Toy Story 4 was unnecessary. Toy Story 4 is still pretty damn good. Surprisingly, I was concerned. You can do unnecessary things and still come out with something pretty damn good, and that's what Shrek 4 did. Shrek 4 offers its audience something new. It takes risks with these characters that mostly pay off. Granted, all of these risks at least have the netting of an Uno reverse card at the end, but still, they tried. And for the most part, they succeeded. It gives us a brand new worthy bad guy. Rumpelstiltskin, although now recast and redesigned from his last minor appearance in the movie that came before it, made for a really fun villain. This performance was really entertaining, even if it was a little bit hard on the ears. But I grew up watching The Nanny on cable, so my eardrums are just like sandpaper now anyway, I'm fine. He's an awful little prick that could almost give Lord Farquaad a run for his money. Stiltskin tricked Shrek into giving up the day that he was born, so he can live life as the ogre he once was in an alternate timeline of events. What I love about this alternate timeline is that it allows us to see just how far Shrek has grown since the first movie, and just how much has changed in the relationships that he's made with these characters. It allows Fiona to remind Shrek audiences of just how much of a badass she is, as these movies did seem to soften her up over time. And Puss in Boots is fat now, because, yeah, I don't know, fuck it, why not? But I think what I love the most about this movie is that it discards older elements that didn't quite work for the franchise. Like Artie. Goodbye, young Arthur. You will be missed. Not by me or anybody watching these videos, but probably by J-Tims. Kinda missing Eric Idle, though, I'm not gonna lie. I know a lot of people have given him shit for his role as Merlin. I don't know. I kinda liked it. I just wish he did something. anything really. I also really like that this movie kind of laughs in the face of a predetermined destiny. You make your own destiny. While I don't think this is an incredibly well thought out ending to one of the most successful animated movie series, it is, at the very least, a very good one. I especially don't believe this movie deserves to be dismissed just because the previous one was swampy ogre ass. Shrek 4 is a good movie. It has the heart that was so clearly missing in the last installment, and so present in the first two. It's a much more serious outing for the big green guy. This movie's a lot darker than the previous ones. Sometimes at the expense of the comedy, but the laughs do still manage to find their way to slip in through the cracks. This adventure sometimes even feels hopeless for the DreamWorks mascot. And despite the fact that these movies are intertwined with the concept of happy endings, there was still a moment or two when I was first watching this that I kind of second-guessed it. If your only reason for not watching the Shrek movie is because how wrong you felt by Shrek the Third, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I know how stupid that sounds, but yeah, surprisingly, a lot of my friends that I talked to about this stopped watching after how bad the third one was. They didn't even give the fourth one a try. Didn't even give it a shot. Give it a shot, is what I'm trying to say. You're not doing anyone dirty but yourself by not watching that movie. And now there's talks of yet another Shrek movie. This time not being done by DreamWorks, but instead by Illumination. And I am not looking forward to that. No, I don't want any of that. Don't want that. That's no, thank you. DreamWorks themselves, the ones who catapulted Shrek into pop culture fame, didn't always do right by Shrek. But now I'm supposed to believe that these guys will? DreamWorks didn't always capture the depth of Shrek. But now I'm supposed to believe that the guys who made those shitty Minions movies, they're capable of doing that? Yeah, okay. Not checking out to me. I won't hold my breath waiting for this one to succeed. But like with everything else in life, I will be entering this hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. I'll either be pleasantly surprised, or at the very least, not as taken back by the letdown. So, if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comment section below. I was actually thinking of doing a retrospective of the entire series, and even taking a look at some of the spin-offs that the Shrek franchise spawned, some of which may surprise you. I know that they have me. If you guys want to see me do a follow-up to this video, let me know in the comment section below by commenting, "Let the ogre die." With that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank y'all for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
End of story. Bye-bye. See you later.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bad time. Same bad channel.
Well, in the morning, I'm making waffles. That shit bussin'. No cap.
Shut it down.